thanks very much for joining us on this wet evening. So we are doing a little bit more of a workshop today. So what this talk is based around, workshop, not talk, and the reason I wrote this is I'm really fed up with terrible meetings, right? We've all been in them, we've all been to a meeting where we maybe didn't even speak, somebody just dominated the whole thing and we feel like we absolutely wasted our time. So this is why I put this workshop together, because some really simple facilitation skills and just some planning can make us have much more effective meetings. So what I'd like you to do now, just in your groups, is start off. You may have already introduced yourselves, but just have a talk about what's the most common complaint that you ever hear about meetings. Chat amongst yourselves. Alright, if I can just call your attention back. So what were some things that came up in your groups? Just want to shout out a few sentences. What was over here?
A lot of talking, but never got to the point.
Yep. So a lot of talking, didn't get to the point. Over here. I heard you say people.
Too many. Overrunning all the time.
Overrunning, yeah.
Too many,
yeah. Right.
lack of clear outcome, the reason for the meeting.
Yeah. Lack of clear outcome and reason.
Lack of focus.
Lack of focus, for sure. So I don't think I actually forgot to introduce myself. I am Philly Lander, and I've been working with teams and organizations for about 10 years now, and sort of accruing whatever skills I needed to help them to keep growing and things to keep improving. I'm a professional coach, as well as being extremely passionate about facilitation. So that's what brings me here today to you. So it's a real bee in my bonnet when I see teams going to their meetings like this. Oh no, it's time for another meeting. Well, we were talking before you started, you said someone in your meeting sits and plays Pokemon, which I'm not adverse to, but yeah. So we all have terrible meetings. So why is this a problem? It's a problem because teams and groups of people are the predominant unit of work in organizations today. That's how we get our work done. The work that we do is so complex now that it's not possible for one individual to hold all of the information. So it's these meetings or these coming together of groups for that collaboration, for that work to happen, how these units of work get that done. And so if all we're having is terrible meetings, that means we're not getting the kind of work done that we could be. So what is the impact of bad meetings? Decrease in engagement. You don't want to go, you don't want to talk. If it's just feeling like a waste of time every time, why would you want to keep coming and wanting to give your all? Increases frustration, negatively affects motivation. We get worse solutions because people aren't talking up. And it's a waste of time and money. So not only is it a waste of time and money, but you're also, and remembering that in most of the industry that we're working in, you're knowledge workers, right? You are paid to think. That is what we do. And so if what you're doing is affecting motivation and decreasing engagement, that means that knowledge workers are definitely not going to be working out your best or getting the best solutions. So I'll let you read that. Some horrifying stats. So I decided I wanted to know, well, why are meetings so bad? What is it that's going on? So the question I got you to ask each other when you first came in, what's the most common complaint you have? I ran a poll on Twitter. So I was like, I want to get to the bottom of this. Let's get some data and then design a workshop around some data. So these were some of the quotes that came out of that. Is this readable? Yeah, okay. So that's a lot of what you all said. So it's very, very common. So I actually had about 168 respondents, which is statistically viable. My maths teacher, the husband, told me. So overwhelmingly, value came out. Over half of people said they got no value from their meeting. So from all the little comments, I kind of categorized them into themes, and these were the things that came out. Duration and frequency. Now, I do think it's possible that those are true too, but I might see these as symptoms of there being no value. Because to me, one meeting with no value is too many meetings. And whatever length it is, I don't care. It didn't need to have it. So it's really clear that not achieving value is coming out there. So what I'd like to introduce you to is a very simple framework for planning out your meetings and a few steps that make sure you've covered all the bases, but it's just going to help you ensure that you're having the most productive meetings you can. So this is the facilitation loop, and we're going to step through this in greater detail as we go through, and I'm going to have you try out some techniques. You're going to be working together and doing things, so I'm not going to talk the whole time, so don't worry. So I put this here, always take time to close the loop, and that's going to become very important when I go through that later. Okay, so we're going to start in prep. So every meeting should have a goal and an outcome. If you take one thing away from this session today, if every meeting you ever had in the future had a goal and an outcome, just that alone, we would see a significant increase. How many times do you get an invite from somebody that just says, catch up, with nothing else in it? And you're like, well, what is that for? Or it's just a reoccurring meeting and there's absolutely no goal and you do feel like you're just going and wasting your time. And the other massive tip that I would give you is to have a question-based agenda. So sometimes, even if we're lucky enough to get an agenda, often at the moment it's just a bullet-pointed list of stuff, right? And you don't know when you're done with that. You could talk about those things forever, but if you can take that bullet-pointed list and sculpt it into questions, you then know when you're done because you've answered that question. It's much more action-oriented. So these are the things that we need to do in the prep step. So there's some very simple questions that we need to ask to do this, which, why, who, when, what, where, why. You may have seen these questions before. But these are just, the prep is such an important part. So, there's some arrows for you. Okay, so if I was going to give you the goal, an example of what a good goal for a meeting looks like for this session today, my goal is that all attendees to understand the importance of productive meetings and how to achieve it. That's the goal that we're moving towards today. And the outcomes are that you can articulate what facilitation is and how it can help meetings be more effective. You can use the facilitation loop to plan your own meetings. And you will gain experience of multiple techniques to help support your teams. So that is our goals and outcomes for this session. The question-based agenda, I'll just flick through this quickly, but just so you can get an idea of what a question-based agenda looks like. I've ticked off the first two, and that's the agenda for the rest of this workshop today. So just to give you an idea, these really simple things can help. So what I'd like you to do, because I said this is a workshop, at your table, you can take one meeting between the group, we'll do it in pairs, take the next meeting that you're going to have and write a goal and an outcome for it, and try your hand at a question-based agenda. So I'm just going to give you about 5 minutes or so just to try this out. Okay?
Yeah.
I just have your attention again. So you don't need to read them out, but just how did you find doing that? Was it easy, hard, useful, not useful? Torturous?
Very torturous. Not very torturous.
Just a little bit torturous.
I think it helps provide some clarity.
Yeah. And it definitely can be challenging sometimes because you're like, what is this meeting for? But that's putting that effort in, then can just ensure that you have a better one. But sometimes I find that if you're really struggling to find the goal, sometimes question whether that actually needs to be a meeting, because sometimes maybe it just needs to be an email, maybe sometimes it needs to be something else. We don't always have to have, a meeting is not always the answer. Any other comments on how you find that?
I like the think about questions on the agenda. That's not something that I've really ever considered.
Yeah. Cool. Well, hopefully at least one of you in each group now has something to take away to use. Okay. So I'm gonna give you these are my top facilitation tools, and I tend to use these in almost every single meeting that I have, and they're very, very simple. And you've probably come across them before, but I just like to mention them because I think they're very foundational pieces. So the first one being a parking lot or a car park, depending on what side of the Atlantic you're on. But that is just a place on the wall, or if you're having a remote meeting, it can just be a place on your shared whiteboard of when ideas and things come up, but they're not related to the goal and the outcome that you set.
My colleague Sal came up with another name for that. She's much more environmental than to have a campfire, so she now calls it a seed bed.
Seed bed. That's okay. I'll add the third one in there. But it can be extremely useful because we have the goal, we have the outcome, everybody knows what they are in the room. So it means that the whole group can utilize the parking lot, not just you as the facilitator, when we go off on a tangent. Because it's going to happen, right? We're all human beings. And sometimes you do have a great idea when you're talking about something else, but you want to have somewhere to capture it. It's also very useful as a facilitator to be able to close down conversations that aren't necessarily helping us achieve their goals, but that person still feels heard and you've captured their idea. But you must come back to it at the end of the meeting, because if you don't, you'll only get to use it once, and the next time you try to use that person's going to go, no, that's where you put stuff to go and die, I'm going to finish saying my piece. So please make sure that you come back to it before the end of the meeting. A visible timer. So I gather that maybe people in the room here, you might also be participating in the meeting. You won't just be the facilitator. So a visible timer can be super helpful here for time boxing parts of the agenda, because it means you can get in there and do the work as well, and then the timer will go off and it stops the work, and you can sort of readdress what's going on. But also work tends to fill the amount of time that you give it, so it's good just to have these regular check-ins and go, are we actually working towards our goal? Have we gone off on a tangent? It just allows you that moment to take that step back and go, okay, how are we doing? And we've only got 5 minutes left, so maybe we should stop talking and make plans for the next thing we need to do. Say, okay. And an action table. So very often when you're in the middle of a meeting, actions and things that need to happen come up, and we go, yeah, I'll do that, and then we forget about it. So keep this up, either on your remote board or up on the wall or just on a piece of paper, it doesn't matter, but just capture what the action is. And then when it comes to the end of the meeting, during the closing part, which we'll go through soon, you assign who is going to do that. Try your best to get one name here. It helps better with accountability than putting, like, say, 5 people's names on it, then it's less likely to happen. When is a reasonable time to expect it to be done by? And then definition of done. So often when we say, yeah, I'll do that, it's not actually clear what it means that we're meant to do. So often you get like, oh, something like improve communication. What does that mean to be done with that? So it might just be a first step. So it might be book a lunch with that team that we're not actually great at communicating with, or something like that. But just define what it is that you're actually asking people to do. And this really, really helps to ensure that things get done, because it's a bit more clear and people know what's expected of them and when by. So these are my top tools. So we're now jumping back into the facilitation loop, and now we're going to open the session. So my favorite descriptions of facilitation is this. You create the container and they create the content. So the container is the meeting that you have created, the goals, the outcomes, and the agenda, but also the tools and techniques that you're going to utilize within that. You're actually creating a sort of environment within this room with people. So you create that container by opening the session. So you confirm what the goal is, because, and remember we did our prep steps, so we probably would have put the goal, the outcomes, and the agenda into a beautiful email invite that's actually useful to people. But let's face it, probably about 50% of them didn't read it, and it's just good to have a reminder. So confirm the goal, verify the outcomes, walk the agenda, introduce any tools that you want them to use, so do that up front so people know what's going on, and outline roles and responsibilities. This is a really important one, because if, let's say, for example, someone's coming into the meeting with the expectation that they're there to make a decision, but in reality they're there to gather data from to help someone else make a decision, that could have some pretty difficult outcomes. You just want to be really clear what people's roles and responsibilities in that space is. And part of that might be holding each other accountable to the goals and outcomes and utilizing the parking lot, because it's that kind of thing. So we just want to set that from the start, and asking the question, do you think this agenda is going to help us get to our goals and outcomes that we've set? Because there's an opportunity, you might be wrong. And it gives people that opportunity to voice that, and you can pivot in the session. All right, so that's how you open the session. And now we're going to get into the main part of the loop, which is doing the work. This is the meat of the session. So I want to introduce you to this diagram. It comes from Sam Kanner's Facilitator's Guide to Participatory, I find it really hard to say, decision making. If you really want to go deeper into facilitation, I really recommend this book. What is being illustrated here is the groups making a decision and how they move through it. So interestingly, this first part here, where we have business as usual, the reason that's there, so all the dots represent ideas sort of flowing and going along. So a new topic comes in, we have a few ideas, and we're in business as usual. And the thing is, a lot of teams stop here. Now what I mean by business as usual, as as humans, when we're trying to come up with solutions, ideas, the things that come to our mind first are the things that we've done most frequently, or the things that we do things we've done most recently, and the things we do most frequently, okay? So our brains are always trying to conserve energy, and those are the things that are easiest for our brain to pull forward, are those ideas that we've done the most, or we've done most recently, because we remember those much more easily. And that's why teams sometimes stop here. They go, oh, great, we've got an idea. Cool, let's go. But part of what facilitation, and then you're only going to get the same ideas over and over again, right? But we want different ideas. We want to move past that. And this is part of the role of facilitation, is to encourage moving past that business as usual into the divergent, the grown-in, which we will talk about, and the convergent, and then down until we actually make a decision. So what we're going to do is we're going to step through each of these zones now. I'm going to teach you a tool and technique for each section, what's also going on for the people, and what the role of the facilitator is in each of these zones. Any questions? Cool. All right, divergence zone. So when people come in to the meeting, they could have been experiencing different things, they're in different moods, and they also might have a different interpretation about what this meeting is for. So the kind of tools that you want here is anything that brings focus and makes things visible, so we're all on the same page, and giving people a chance to be heard. So I've generally found that if you can get people talking within the first 5 minutes, they're more likely to keep talking. So just doing little things, maybe getting people to answer a little question each, just to get everybody speaking within the first 5 minutes. And for the facilitator, what you're looking to do here is build safety in the environment. So we talk about psychological safety, but you do that by just kind of letting people know what's going on and what's expected of them. People tend to feel much more relaxed when they know what's going on and when it's planned to be ended as well. And what you're trying to do here is just pull out more ideas and encourage. So asking, what else? Okay, so we've got the solution. Great, we've got one. What else? Yeah, so you're just trying to draw it out. And the one I like to pull out when teams seem to get stuck is just like, right, okay, if there was no constraints on money, time, people, how would you do this? And they go quite lofty, and then you go, okay, so that's beyond where we are now, but what's the first step towards that? And that can just really help keep the conversation going. So now it's time for you to do some things. So you need a fictitious meeting to work on together. So I've created a meeting, hope you don't mind. So the goal here is to understand how we can improve the BCS Edinburgh event experience for future attendees, and the outcome is a prioritized list of improvements to make to the next event. Yeah? Cool. So the first technique you're going to use is group mind mapping. So you've probably used a mind map before, but I'll just show you a way to do that as a group and how to utilize it as a facilitation tool. I really believe that doing a group mind map has facilitation superpowers, because not only are you visually seeing what's going on, you're building it, you'll see in a minute, you're building upon each other's ideas and seeing connections as you go, while also recording the ideas all at the same time. So it's pretty useful. So you're starting with the central node, which is the goal that we're trying to discuss. So what are the improvements? The first node is a subtopic. And that could be something like parts we enjoy. Okay, so quite a large theme. But then when I move down to an association, and parts we enjoy, association could be learning new things or meeting new people. And then we want to get it, so the third level is an action. And this is the level that we want to encourage you to get to. So it's an action to help achieve that thing that we've said. So for example, parts we enjoy, meeting new people, add more social time to the event could be the action for that. So I'd like one person from each table to volunteer to be a facilitator for this. What I want you to do is ensure that everybody's getting a chance to put their ideas in. There's post-its and pens for everybody, but really encourage your group to get to actions. Okay, so follow a line of thought all the way through to actions. So you're going to have 7 minutes for this. Okay, so the groan zone. This is the inevitable time during a meeting where you're thinking, we're never going to get there. People can't agree. Maybe we don't have, what's wrong with this group? There's dysfunction, or have we not got the right people in the room? But actually this is a really natural process of groups making decisions together. And so what's actually going on here is you've just asked someone to come up with lots of ideas. And we get attached to our own ideas. They're the best ideas because we came up with them from our own experience of the world. That would be the best way to solve that problem. And we've potentially seen it work before. Now what you're asking me to do is to take someone else's idea and think why their idea might be better than mine. This can be called, what can be going on here is something called cognitive dissonance. And this is when you have a belief or an idea in your mind and another idea comes in and just butts up against it. Something that's contrary to your view of the world or your belief of the world. And this can actually trigger the stress response in the body and can cause physical discomfort. So this is the reason why we often see some quite negative behaviors potentially at the point where we're in the groan zone, people talking over one another, people completely shutting down, not engaging anymore. So this is generally what's going on. I mean, not to say you could have some dysfunctional groups, but this is generally what is going on within your group when you're trying to come together to make a decision. So it's really good to be aware of this. So what you can do to help, that you're all asking. So you're looking for tools here that will group together, find any commonalities between ideas, and also help people see things from a different perspective. So actually the mind mapping, again, although we were diverging with that and getting ideas, you were also building connections. This is why this is the superpower tool. But this is what we're trying to do in the groan zone. So you can actually understand and see things from somebody else's point of view, which can help us move through this. So as the facilitator here, this is going to be where you do your most sort of what we'll call muscular facilitation. You're going to be a lot more involved. You want to try and provide a shared framework of understanding. It's probably quite a structured technique, and trying to find common ground and listen for connections. So this is where you can be listening to what people are saying and try and pull out commonalities that you're hearing. So I hear you're saying X. That sounds a little bit similar to what this person's saying over here, and try and make those connections for them, because this can be quite a challenging part. So really great tool to help here. You may have seen this before, but it's called an effort impact grid. So we've got low impact, high impact along the left-hand side, low effort, high effort. And the way we use this is you're going to take your actions and think about your action and think, is this high impact or low impact? What effect is this going to have? Is it low effort or high effort? Now, with the groups that you ever do this with, you'll want to define what you mean by effort. That could be different for different situations. You can also replace what you put on these axes. I've had teams do this before with their backlog of bugs. There shouldn't be a bug, but they'll have like risk and frequency, for which they should prioritize fixing first. So you can it's just a really nice way to compare things. So you take an action and you decide, actually that one's quite high impact and it's quite low effort, so it's up here and it's closer to the left-hand side. So you don't necessarily put it in the box, you can move it along as a scale. You then bring the next action, and comparatively compared to the first one, is it the same? Is it less effort? Is it higher impact? And just compare until you've got all of the actions in place. But why this helps in the grown zone is it helps you kind of appreciate, oh, I didn't realize that my idea would be such high effort. And it's kind of a safer way to find that out as you're going through, rather than just someone going, no, terrible idea, we can't do that. So it's a little bit more structured. So I'd like you all to have a go at that. So you'll need your facilitator to draw this grid, pick your actions up from your mind map. Okay, if I could just bring the attention back, please. All right. So this is the great part. This is the part where you actually feel like you're starting to get somewhere. You've come through the difficult part. You're now much more aligned. And tools you're looking for here is anything with evaluation or planning. Because we've filtered everything down now. We have a good idea of what's going on, and now we just need to actually plan out what we're trying to do and come to our final decision. And for the facilitator here, a bit more hands off. They've got it now. They're through the worst of it, and it's just about a gentle nudge towards the goal and the outcome, just ensuring that we have completed through those. So this is the nice place to be in. This is the zone that we're all trying to get to. So dot voting, it's very common to use, but it can be used especially if you're trying to make a prioritized list, which was the outcome of this. I don't think I'm going to ask you to do that because I don't know that that's going to be effective use for time, but dot voting, for anybody that doesn't know, although a good rule of thumb that I've found is give them as many votes as 20% of the options they have. Sometimes it feels like you've got too many votes, too little votes. About 20% of the number of options can be helpful. So hopefully that's something new on dot voting. So yeah, you just vote for the ones that you feel are the best ideas or you want to prioritize. Again, depends what the decision is. If it's a really super important decision, probably not dot voting. And we can look at some different techniques. But for just more standard prioritization decisions, we can try that out. So you're just voting. So we're going to close the session now. So this is the most important part. So I told you about always taking time to close the loop. The reason for that is that if people are in the middle of working and the last thing that they remember is just someone banging on the door going, it's my time, the rush and the getting out the door, and you haven't actually closed off, you were in mid-thought, you kind of walk out that door and everything just kind of falls out and you've kind of lost. So even this is the magical moment where a good meeting can become a terrible one because we didn't finish it correctly. Or even if you had a bad meeting, if you finish it properly, it can still be valuable because we can still say, okay, we've ruled out what we're going to do and we've made our plans for the next step. So if you've got an hour-long meeting, I usually leave at least 7 minutes to close down, if not 5. You may think, hey, but that's more time, we could have been doing stuff. But honestly, the more effectively you close it down, the better the meeting will have been. So the steps for that, ask the question, have we met our goal? It doesn't matter if the answer is no. Summarize the work that's been done. So we talked about X, Y, and Z. Revisit the parking lot, remember? It's not where stuff goes to die. What was it called, Seb? Sorry? Seabed. Complete your action table. Plan for the next meeting if needed. And celebrate. Right? So we can actually feel, yay! We actually feel like we achieved something during this session. We didn't waste our time. And finally, in 5 minutes, here are my top tips for facilitation. So the first one being pay attention to your energy and theirs. So as the facilitator, you set the tone in that room. If you walk in there all tired on your phone, you make that okay for everybody else to be doing that. So remember that you can bring your energy up a little bit and set the tone for that room. So remember, as the facilitator, you have influence on the energy in that space. But also, if everybody is really flagging, I would rather finish something early rather than trying to flog a dead horse. You have a finite amount of mental resource, and I'd rather finish a meeting earlier and come back to it at another time. So just pay attention to that. Start strong and end strong. Yeah, that's what it says. The reason for that is the something called the primacy-regency effect. So with our brains, we tend to remember the things at the beginning and the things at the end most clearly. We tend to actually forget what happens in the middle. And so if you start strong, this is what we're doing, this is what we're going to achieve today, and you end with, this is what we did, these are our plans, that's what people tend to remember. Like I said, that's why the end is that magical moment, because if what they remember is the flustered grabbing of the things and running out the door, then that's what they'll remember about that meeting, not the good work that happened in the middle. Display the goals and outcomes on the wall, or in whatever medium you're using, where everybody can see it. So not only does it remind everybody what they were, but it just means, like, as a facilitator, you can just go, is this current conversation helping us to achieve this goal and outcome? And you can keep drawing back to that. Visualization. So it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can just be writing up bullet points or the post-it notes that we've done. But the reason why this is so effective is that we use up an awful lot of mental energy trying to keep track of the conversation that's happening, while also trying to imagine what we want to do and weighing up and prioritizing. So you want to reduce the cognitive load, and you can do that by keeping track of the conversation or the ideas and just getting them up on the wall. And that means that people then have more of their brain available to do the heavy lifting and the stuff you want them to be using their energy on, which is the weighing up and the prioritizing and the imagining. Incorporate movement. So we get about 20% more oxygen to our brains when we stand up. And I also think changing people's environments helps. So if your team is very much sat at their desks at computer screens, and then they come into your meeting room and they're sat at a table watching someone type into a tool that we'll not talk about on the screen, then not much has changed here, not much has shifted, and they're just sitting here. But if you incorporate, actually we're going to stand up around this board, let's look at this visualization together, it just creates a little bit more engagement as well and helps wake people up a little bit. And 6, prep. That is the number one thing. Like I said, if the one thing you take away from today is just having a goal and an outcome for every meeting you ever have, you will see such an improvement from that. I just wanted to give you a little action plan to get you started. So what can you do when you get back to work? So have a look at your current meetings, do a little bit of an audit on them. Am I having too many? Is this reoccurring one? Actually, are we just talking about, are we getting anything done? Particularly the reoccurring ones are good to look at. Talk to your team, let them know, hey, I went to this thing and I want to try out putting some goals and outcomes into our meetings. Lead by example. So if from now on every appointment you send out has a goal, an outcome, an agenda, and then people come to me and it's like, hey, these meetings always go really well. Maybe I'll try doing that as well. So that's how you can start bringing that change in. And not to say you're going to reject any invites that you get that don't have a goal and agenda, but if someone invites you to a meeting, just go, hey, just wondering, what is the goal of this meeting? And just getting that up front, that can really help. And just measure if you're having improvements from what you're trying out. And mentor others, spread the word. But just tell other people about it. Cool. Ta-da! I'm on time. Yeah, so electronic things can be really helpful there. So if you've something like Fun Retro, which is a free tool, people can vote privately, and then you don't see the votes until the end. Or if you just want to do it paper, or Fun Retrospective, I think it is. Or just have people actually put their vote, it's a little bit more time consuming, but write their vote on a post-it and pass it to the facilitator, and then you can very quickly go if you think people are going to manipulate it. Or, depending on what the vote is on, you can do what's called Fist of 5, where you count down 3, 2, 1, and then people hold up fingers depending on how much they agree. So 5, I super agree, or I'm super confident about this, and then reduce down. And because it's 3, 2, 1, they can't influence each other, and you can kind of then get a better gauge of the room. So there's 2 things there. There's remote meeting and there's hybrid meetings. Yeah. So if we take remote meetings first, I tend to be much more muscular with my facilitation when I do it. So I will And I will design this with people up front that I will call their names every so often. It's not because I'm trying to put them on the spot, it's because I'm trying to just make sure in case they wanted to say something and they weren't able to get in. I would have shorter time boxes for things. Also, depending on what it is, if you've got a large group, utilizing doing smaller rooms of people. So you go, okay, so we're trying to come up with an answer to X. I'm going to spin us off now. If you Zoom is a tool that you can do that automatically with, but when I've worked in companies with their own software, I just set up separate rooms and go, okay, you're going to that room, you're going to that room, and then in smaller groups, there tends to be more engagement because there's less hiding and less multitasking because they're actually there with like maybe just 3 other people. With hybrid meetings, especially if the majority of the people in the room, giving the person on the computer a buddy in the room so that that person is always checking in and making sure that that person is getting a chance to speak. Also, for remote meetings, there's a great website called Collaboration Superpowers. And it's Lizette Sutherland, and she has everything about remote facilitation. And she has these great cards, because you know the way often you end up speaking over each other or you freeze or whatever on your video chat. It's just different cards that say like, I can't hear you. There's background noise. I think there should be one for who's breathing loudly. But yeah, so she has this great card. I think you can download a free PDF and just print them off and cut them yourselves, or you can get. Is that helpful? Yeah. I think there was another. So yeah, you can try the parking lot and having the stuff, having the goal and the outcome on the board, so you can keep referring back to that. If it's a continual thing that keeps happening, it depends what my relationship is like in that group. So I may have designed to them that I would reflect some behavior back and then see what the group wants to do with it. If not, if that's not the relationship I have, I might try and chat to that person and see what's going on, because maybe they feel like they're not being heard or something like that. So there's usually some underlying reason for it. So I maybe just chat to them so we get curious about what's actually happening. But in the room, you can utilize your different tools, or if it's really happening where they're just talking over people, change out what you're doing and do some silent brainstorming where people come up with their ideas, and then that means that everybody's voices they have equal voice. They're all the same, because then we're going to put them up and group and theme them together. So you can vary the technique into more individual work. Well, I always try to not punish the punctual. So I just kind of established that relationship that I'm going to start on time and I'm going to end on time. And if someone's continually, then I would talk to them and maybe give them some feedback and let them know that using sort of like impact feedback, something like that, just sort of like isolating what the behavior is and what the impact of that is in the group. So, you know, when you're late, because that's an observable thing, they can't argue with that. When you're late, it means that the team can't get started and we're behind, or they're feeling like you find your time's more valuable than theirs. And people can, yeah. So it's just about establishing that relationship and talking to the behavior, and also curious about the behavior. Like, is that person late because the meeting's actually not at a great time for them? Or are they late because they're overworked and they're running between loads of meetings? So just trying to work out what it is, and if it's a behavioral thing, then chatting with it or moving the meeting if it's not. I mean, I think people don't want to stand for longer, but I think people will also just put up with it if they want to talk. So I think standing can help, but I also think just it's having the clear goal and agenda and the time boxing that helps.